Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
And now, after 40 years in the Republican Party, one elected official in Oregon is saying, enough.
I wanted to share some great news, and I wanted you to be one of the first to know that I have changed my political party.
Yes!
Lori Stegmann is out front. She's the Multnomah County Commissioner in Oregon. I'm sorry if I didn't quite get the full county name right, Lori, but let me just ask you. You've been a Republican your whole life, okay? And in a country where you have two parties, that can be a very important part of identity. You're an elected official. It's been a really important part of yours. Why are you now switching parties?
Well, that's an excellent question. It really hasn't been just one thing. It's been a culmination of the things that have happened that the Trump administration has come down upon the American people. And for me, I'm an orphan, an immigrant, and with the family separation of children, that was really the final straw for me. And so it was something very personal to me.
And I mean, I can hear the emotion in your voice. I mean, so some people might say, okay, well, Trump has said, when he said they're rapists, or obviously the infamous tape that he said. Let me just play a couple of things he said well before this whole separations at the border. Here it is.
I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the do anything.
We have a very hostile judge because, to be honest with you, the judge should have thrown the case out on summary judgment. But because it was me and because there's a hostility toward me by the judge, tremendous hostility, beyond belief, I believe he happens to be Spanish.
So those are just two examples. But I think, Lori, what's interesting is you're saying all of that added up, but it really was what has just been happening at the southern border that made you change your mind and your party.
Yeah, I mean, the Trump administration and President Trump, the misogyny, the racism. I serve on a board, an all-women Multnomah County Commission board. Our board is the first majority-minority board in nearly 165 years. I'm the first Asian American, I'm the first Korean American to ever serve on the board. This is not the ideals and the beliefs that our country, the country that I know and love, is part of. It's horrifying to me that more people aren't doing what we need to do. We need to speak out, we need to stand together, and we need to call out the inequities and the horrible things that are happening at the hands of our current federal administration. And I, for one, as an immigrant, I want people to understand this is the face of an immigrant. We are all immigrants. I came to this country when I was 6 months old. I was adopted by a loving family. I put myself through college. I started my own business. I have lived the American dream, and I have a responsibility to pay it forward. And there were so many people that I have never met that have given me this opportunity. And honestly, if not being able to come to America, I would be dead. And I jokingly say I turned out pretty good. But I say that in all seriousness, because if you give people the same basic humanity and kindness and love that we all deserve, we can all thrive.
It is Friday, the 27th of July of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, folks. That's right, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. The French 77s are all stirred and poured and ready for you in this virtual salon that we call the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. That was, at the top there, Lori Stegmann, the Multnomah County Commissioner in Oregon, switching parties. Yeah, I mean, the misogyny was getting to her pretty bad. The racism was getting to her pretty bad. But kidnapping kids at the border, that was a lot. That was the final straw, she said. Good for her. Well, everybody has an epiphany at some point in their lives, or at the very last moment of their lives. Good for her. Okay, well, what are we going to do about this guy? He can just ignore everything. Do they send the sergeant at arms there? Does the Secret Service prevent the sergeant at arms from... They're already protecting Don Jr. from being served with any summons. What happens when this president needs to be, well, physically removed from the office? How does that work? The right president at the right time to destroy America. Yeah. And what I don't get is how cheaply these Republicans were bought off. What a bunch of bottom feeders. I mean, at least hold out for more money. I mean, come on. Of course, the oligarchs that we have here in our own country seem to be pretty high on the list of contacts for the Ruskies. Vlad knows, Vlad knows where the true power in America lay. Is? Yikes. It's Friday. Have a French 77. Oh, my. Yeah, Vlad knows where the true power does lie. And he's going to go, his henchmen are going to find a bunch of Looney Tune rich people. Because he's got them too, and he has them all manipulated. He's KGB. Jeez. Donald Trump prepared his whole life for this. Yeah, to be a sellout traitor. Who knew that some coddled rich boy would do that? Jesus. Well, reap what you sow, as they say. Reap what you sow. What's on the rest of the menu? It is Friday. It's the end of the week. We made it. Now we have to get through the weekend, because that's where we get all of it. All that didn't happen during the week, we're going to get on the weekend. Isn't that weird how that works now? Everything's different. Well, on the rest of the menu, in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The trial against the head of the Michigan State Health Department for felony and involuntary manslaughter charges related to the Flint water crisis, well, that trial has been delayed. Just as a new report finds that 10 times more people died than was officially reported. 10 times. Trump's trade spat with Mexico speeds the U.S. decline as the global wheat supplier. Thanks, Don. And security guards at the Rubens Museum in Belgium steered visitors away from the gallery's nudes in a jab at Facebook censorship. Zuckerberg. Hey, he lost a bunch of money. Couldn't have happened to a nicer person, because a nicer person wouldn't have been a Holocaust denier and let Alex Jones spout out whatever he wants on his platform. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where there is a glaring problem with Trump's art of the EU Soybean Deal. Glaring. How's it going to get enforced? Ooh, I gave it away. And Einstein is right again, as astronomers confirm another key theory. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you'll find to the right of the page the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Link and RoaringGrrl, who is going to Netroots Nation 18, and we continue to make this entreaty request. Instead of going to the contribute donate buttons that are on the leftish of the from the chat room link there at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, if you would throw those contributions towards Kelly so that she can have dinner, lunch, and maybe even breakfast while she's at Netroots Nation in New Orleans. Thank you for your generosity. And we'll get those links on the buttons there at the bottom of our homepage activated so that we get this general thing for the station, because we are unable to do this without you. You know that, don't you? We pay our bills. We're not like the guy that sits in the Oval Office. Okay, we pay our bills. Thank you for your generosity in helping us do that. Resistance Radio still pays their bills. Okay, you can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. How easy is that? Also on Facebook if you want to. The guy lost so much money. God, I'm so happy. We're over there as Netroots Radio, so you can check that out. Also, the show is on Facebook as well as West Coast Cookbook. And on Twitter, you can follow the show at Cookbook West. At Cookbook West. If you typed in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, that's what would show up, just so you know. And get podcasts of the show by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. If you want, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. Oh, and very importantly, I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. And you can find me on Daily Kos as Justice Putnam. All one word. Not Putman. Putnam. Man spelled backwards. We're the higher class of putts. That's what I was told. And I think they're right. Okay. Of course, it doesn't matter whether you're high class, low class putts. We all are equal in the end, aren't we? Yes, we are. Alrighty. Well, speaking of being all equal in the end, the trial has been postponed. Now, I say delayed. There's a little slight difference there. But regardless, the trial of this Michigan State Health Department head in the Flint water crisis, that has been delayed. Just as a new report by an investigation by PBS Frontline found that contaminated water in Flint, Michigan may have killed 10 times the number of people as the official count currently indicates, through a rare form of pneumonia. E.A. Crunden from Think Progress brings us this. Okay, the news coincides with a delay in the trial against the head of the state's health department to determine whether he is guilty of involuntary manslaughter and other felony charges relating to the water crisis there. A decision was initially expected to come Wednesday, but instead, District Court Judge David Goggins delayed issuing a decision in the case against Director of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Nick Lyon until August 20th. According to Michigan Radio, defense attorney John Bursch said that Goggins had asked both the prosecution and the defense to further address lingering questions in the case. One thing he asked us, now that's a judge, was to focus on specifically was the gross negligence aspect of the manslaughter charges, and that was the defense attorney saying that. Lyon has held his position for several years and was head of the state's health department in 2014 when Genesee County, where Flint is located, saw an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, a rare and deadly form of pneumonia linked to fresh water sources. No public announcement was made about the outbreak until January of 2016, by which point people were already sick. Okay, from 2014 to 2016. Let's see, that's 2 years now, isn't it? Bureaucracy does move slow. Steady, but slow. Especially when you want it to. Well, two elderly men, Richard Skidmore and John Snyder, both from the Flint area, died from the disease. And their deaths are cited in the case against Lyon. Prosecutors say the health department had waited too long to tell the public and to warn them about the disease's link to drinking water. How nice. Special prosecutor Todd Flood has argued that Lyon had the chance to save lives but did not, at the expense of Flint's residents. Bursch has countered that Lyon lacked full information and should not be held accountable for the extent of the crisis. I don't know, I think the buck stops at the head. And let's remind ourselves what this is all about. They were terraforming Flint, Michigan. They wanted those residents out so that, it's the old real estate maxim. I mean, the property vacated is worth more than if it's occupied. The case marks the latest chapter in the Flint water crisis, which began in 2014 when the town's water source was switched as a cost-saving measure. Hasn't really saved costs. Insufficient water treatment allowed the water to become contaminated with lead. Well, that's what you do. You scrimp and save here and there so you can make a buck. And, accidents happen. We call them acts of God. So that endangered about 100,000 people in the area and prompting the state of emergency in 2016. Just a small little thing. At the same time, people became sick with Legionnaire's disease. That outbreak, which lasted until 2015, officially killed 12 people and sickened 90, but that number is now under scrutiny. Frontline's investigation released on Tuesday closely inspected the death count and found that 119 people died of pneumonia during that period of time, with many of those cases potentially linked to Legionella bacteria. Interviews with epidemiologists and infectious disease experts, as well as an extensive review of death records, appear to corroborate the findings that many of the deaths could in fact be linked to the water crisis. So the Frontline team noted an uptick in pneumonia deaths between April of 2014 and October of 2015, a 46% increase over the same time span reviewed going back 6 years. And the investigation noted that was actually unusual. Yeah. Flood, the prosecutor, has argued in court that the death count could, in fact, be much higher than the official number recorded, though only the deaths of Skidmore and Snyder have been formally named. And so a number of criminal cases have also been brought locally in response to the water crisis, including targeting employees from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and Michigan Health Department. Gaga's decision in the Lyons case will now come 13 days after Michigan's primaries, which take place on August 7th. Oh, that's why it got delayed. Notably, Attorney General Bill Schuett and Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley are the front-runners for the state's Republican gubernatorial nomination. And Schuett was the prosecutor who brought the initial prosecutions in the Flint water crisis case. A slew of reporters and even a couple of editors from Reuters bring us this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. With that many reporters, it's appropriate to have even more French 77s. So I'll order some to be made right away, and it is done. That's how it works here. Snap of a finger, or even just the mere thought. I love it. Well, Mexican bread, pasta, and flour tortilla makers are seeking alternative suppliers of wheat to reduce their dependence on the U.S. as trade relations between the new neighbors deteriorate. I don't know why I can't say that today. Mexico, the top importer of U.S. wheat, is increasingly turning to cheaper supplies from Russia. And when we say cheaper, we don't just mean by cost. We mean by quality, too. Cheap. Well, Russia surpassed the U.S. as the top global wheat supplier in 2016. How convenient is that? Now the U.S. market share decline is accelerating as Mexico casts about for more alternative suppliers in Latin America and elsewhere to hedge against the risk that U.S. grains will get more expensive if the Mexican government imposes tariffs. According to interviews with 3 large Mexican millers, international grains traders, the top Mexican government agricultural trade official, and government and industry data analyzed by Reuters. It's important to send signals to Mr. Trump, said Jose Luis Fuente, head of Kenimolt, a Mexican trade group which represents 80% of Mexican millers. Mexico will keep buying American wheat because of its proximity, he said, but we cannot continue to have this absolute dependence. And isn't this exactly what really our farmers warned against? You know, it's not as if you don't want to acknowledge competitors in the market, but you really don't want to drive your customers to them now, do you? Because once Mexico and all these other countries find out that they can get wheat elsewhere in the world, why buy it from Americans? Remember what happened to steel? The loss of the Mexican market is hurting U.S. farmers in states like Kansas, where a severe drought slashed output this year. In the town of Chapman, in central Kansas, farmer Ken Woods said that prices dropped by 50 to 60 cents per bushel in a week late last month as farmers harvested their crops amid export market uncertainty. It's frustrating. Mexico is a natural market for us, he said. Break even might be our best hope this year. Even if U.S. wheat regains its historic price advantage over more distant countries, some Mexican demand may already be lost. Alil Delgado, the owner of Panafios, an artisanal bread shop in Guadalajara, said she would be willing to pay more for flour free of American wheat. Her customers, too, would accept higher bread prices to express their anger over U.S. trade and immigration policies, she said. I would definitely pay a higher price, so long as quality standards are met, Delgado said, and specifically as a way to teach Donald Trump a lesson. From Reuters brings us this last offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Visitors at a Belgian art gallery were stunned when security guards ordered them away from nude paintings by Flemish master Peter Paul Rubens, in what turned out to be a stunt to protest at Facebook blocking the pictures on the grounds of decency. In a video posted by tourism organization Visit Flanders, two, quote, social media inspectors, end quote, wearing uniforms emblazoned with something like the Facebook logo, approach people in the gallery to ask if they have social media accounts. If the answer yes, the bemused tourists are steered away to non-nude paintings. It's for your own protection, the actors tell visitors as they block their view of a painting of Adam and Eve at the Rubens House Museum in Antwerp. Most of the art lovers take the ban on paintings focused on, this is the gallery explaining this, focused on individual body parts such as abs, buttocks, and cleavage and good spirits. But one woman ushered away from the gallery protested by lifting up her shirt to show the security guard her own chest. Rubens, famed for his paintings of voluptuous female nudes, is one of the most acclaimed painters of the Baroque tradition. But Facebook's policy of blocking advertisements that depict nudity meant that Visit Flanders ads for the Rubens House Museum were treated in the same way as pornography. Now, the policy only applies to adverts, and the paintings themselves are allowed to be uploaded as normal posts. Advertisers follow more extensive rules than regular users because these messages are proactively pushed instead of you, as a user, for example, deliberately decide to follow the Facebook page to the Rubens House, a Facebook spokesperson said. Visit Flanders said it was in touch with the platform to seek to resolve the issue. And in 2016, Facebook reversed its decision to remove a famous Vietnam War photograph of a naked girl, Van de Kim Phuc, running away after a napalm attack. They considered that pornography. Well, yeah, war is pornography, I guess, to some. But we ought to face it. And for some reason, Facebook doesn't want to face it. And maybe that's why they had such a precipitous drop of billions of dollars. 15.1. Wow. All right, we got to get to our break. Yes, we do. And mix up some more French 77s for the chef's table. That's what we do here. So we'll go ahead and get to our break. When we come back, we'll have those French 77s awaiting. We'll go through weather from around the world. And then we'll finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea.
to the circles of your mind. A new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Leaves More Than a Trace. Taking its name from the outdoor conservation movement, the new film from Winter's Bone director Deborah Granick, Leaves No Trace, is several kinds of movie. It's a father-daughter love story. It's a piece on homelessness, one about PTSD-affected veterans, and it's a coming-of-age story. As the movie opens, we meet Will and daughter, Ben Foster and New Zealand newcomer Thomasin McKenzie, in and around their camp in the woods near Portland, Oregon. It's soon clear that they're not campers or weekend survivalists. They live there. Later in the film, when a social worker tells Tom that Will was required to provide a home for her, she answers without hesitation, he did. The two come to town only for Will to pick up supplies, which they pay for with the proceeds from him selling meds he's gotten from the VA. Their biggest fear is discovery, for which they even hold drills. Despite that, though, they are eventually discovered, briefly separated, and then placed in a modest dwelling on a Christmas tree farm where Will works to pay the rent. While Tom's socialization proceeds, Will is tormented by it, and eventually takes Tom and heads back out on the road to Washington State, where he's seriously injured but then nursed back to health by the inhabitants of a curious backwoods RV community. It's here, before the inevitable, if not totally conclusive conclusion, that Tom tells her dad, the same thing that's wrong with you isn't wrong with me. Granick is telling an understated but powerful story here, with every sidebar and every frame, especially the long close-ups on Foster's and Mackenzie's faces, advancing the narrative for its ambience. Oscar will remember this one, avoid the post-nomination lines, and catch Leaves No Trace now. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. The U.S.-Mexico border is a hotspot for biodiversity.
You have deserts, you have grasslands, you have mountain ranges.
Paul Ehrlich, an evolutionary biologist and ecologist at Stanford.
It is a borderland between the temperate zone and the tropics.
The border is also, if the Trump administration has its way, a future construction zone, the site of an expanded wall, which Ehrlich and more than 2,500 scientists from around the world say could threaten some 1,500 native plants and animals along the border, 62 of which are endangered.
When you build barriers, you first of all prevent organisms from migrating in response to the climate change we're causing, and that leads to extinctions. We also divide populations, which then makes them smaller and more susceptible to extinction. And, of course, we destroy them directly by wrecking their habitat.
The species at risk include bighorn sheep, gray wolves, pronghorn antelope, and jaguars. Even low-flying creatures could be blocked by a 30-foot wall, he says, like the ferruginous pygmy owl and the endangered checker-spot butterfly.
The butterflies pretty much won't fly over a 5 to 10-foot bush. They're organisms that are used to flying in grasslands, and they view forest or bushlands as barriers.
The article by Ehrlich, colleagues, and scientist signatories is in the journal Bioscience. As for whether President Trump will read their article,
I think he's got other problems at the moment.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Welcome to 60-Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. In colonial America, where Christianity was already deeply established, the Great Awakening took place, a religious revival movement that swept the colonies from the 1730s to the 1760s. A second Great Awakening would take place in the 19th century. These movements helped spread the idea of universal moral human equality, including equality among social classes. By the eve of the American Revolution, universal human equality was a common American idea. It is little wonder that the Virginia Declaration of Rights, adopted on June 12, 1776, while Thomas Jefferson was working on his draft declaration, asserted that all men are by nature equally free and independent. That's all for today's podcast. The show's theme song is Complacent by Cheryl B. Englehart. You can find Cheryl online at cbemusic.com. 60-Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
A $580 copay for your next doctor's visit.
I'm Baratunde Thurston from The Onion, and also, mother. You're listening to the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
As the executive director of the Prison Policy Initiative, Peter Wagner, recently put it, a $3 copay for a doctor's visit really doesn't sound unreasonable until you learn that the person paying is earning 14 cents an hour, which is what happens in the Massachusetts prison system. It's the equivalent of a minimum wage worker being charged $235 as a copay for an office visit. In Oklahoma, prisoners at the bottom of the wage scale earn 5 cents an hour, and so the required $4 copay for a medical visit is roughly equivalent to a $580 copay outside the razor wire. These copay requirements often leave persons in prison with two bad choices: either do without the medical care or rely on family members who don't have the money to send it to them anyway for their needed treatment. Squeezing a few dollars from incarcerated people and from the poorest families puts the health of other inmates, the prison staff, and persons outside at risk. It's a terrible system, cruel and self-defeating, but most states do impose it on the most vulnerable among us.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day the 3 Mile Island Unit 2 reactor partially melted down near Middletown, Pennsylvania. A combination of equipment failure and human error has long been attributed as the cause of the meltdown. An initial overheating and reactor shutdown had occurred, but a pressure valve remained stuck open, allowing coolant to escape. Design flaws in control equipment failed to indicate the position of the valve. Workers then mistook the increased pressure as a result of the excess coolant. They shut off the emergency water system that could have cooled the core. Fears of radiation release and hydrogen bubbles led to voluntary evacuations that included over 140,000 residents. Authorities assured the public that the partial meltdown had been contained. President Carter convened a commission to investigate the causes. It concluded that while the operators took inappropriate actions, the training they received was inadequate, as were the procedures they were required to follow. Plant designers Babcock and Wilcox were held responsible for poor design. The company failed to notify operators of repeated valve failure and a previous near duplicate of the potential catastrophe at the Davis-Besse plant. Metropolitan Edison, General Public Utilities, and the NRC were also held responsible for poor quality control, poor maintenance, communication lapses, and poor training. Fears regarding public health and safety intensified, fueling health studies of those exposed and the anti-nuclear power movement. The aftermath brought about sweeping changes involving emergency response planning, reactor operator training, human factors, engineering, radiation protection, and many other areas of nuclear plant power operations. It also caused the NRC to tighten and heighten its regulatory oversight. All of these changes significantly enhanced U.S. reactor safety. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
I'm Summer Ainsborough. The New Zealand Parliament has passed the world's first domestic violence and workplace legislation. The legislation will allow victims of domestic violence 10 days paid leave from work to get away from their partners, find new homes, and protect themselves. New Zealand has one of the highest rates of domestic violence in the developed world. Police in the country respond to family violence incidents every 4 minutes. The new legislation will come into effect in April 2019. It stipulates that any person experiencing domestic violence will be entitled to 10 days paid leave from work, in addition to standard holiday and sick leave entitlements. They will also be entitled to flexible work conditions designed to ensure their safety, such as changing their work location and email addresses. Victims of domestic violence do not have to provide proof of their situation. The New Zealand Council of Trade Unions welcomed the new legislation. Council Secretary Sam Huggard told the media, domestic violence is a workplace issue because it impacts heavily on people's working lives. He said the country's unions are eager to help workplaces and workers put the new law into practice as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the Australian government has also announced action on domestic violence in the workplace. It says it will introduce legislation entitling workers to 5 days unpaid leave to deal with a family violence situation. The Australian Council of Unions, the ACTU, has criticized the government-proposed legislation because it does not provide for paid leave. A study by the ACTU found that the full cost of leaving an abusive relationship, including moving and lawyer fees, is $18,000 Australian dollars. Unions in Australia have been fighting for domestic violence paid leave for many years. Natalie Lang is a branch secretary of the Australian Services Union. She and others spoke in an ASU video about the need for paid leave in domestic violence situations.
The solution has to be shared by everybody, and union members are putting their hand up and saying, we will be part of the solution.
And the nature of domestic violence is that it's a very difficult thing for women to disclose, and they're in workplaces where there's no understanding that it's a safe place to disclose because there isn't domestic violence leave.
Victims of domestic violence that are going through the court system often have to attend court on multiple occasions and take time off work to do that.
We need to be able to have leave for people to be able to go to the doctor. We need to have leave for them to go to the school and talk about the safe arrangements for the children.
The legal system is not a fast one. For victims of domestic violence, this can specifically be used against them as a means of undermining their employment.
I would say that the offenders quite often rely on this fact. We need the opportunity to perhaps say to the victim, look, you've got this leave with your employer, don't be worried about losing your job.
Most of our clients have children, and if they have a job, it's so important for them to be able to keep that job rather than have to rely on Centrelink or welfare benefits.
It's not a big ask. It's something that should occur and it needs to be done today, and we just can't wait.
If it's in the National Employment Standards, how can it be ignored anymore?
Paid leave is just one less stress for them, and I really think it should be something that the employer recognises and values their worker, keeping them at work and putting in place the things that they need to retain their job.
We won't wait.
We won't wait.
We won't wait.
We won't wait. We won't wait because women can't wait.
The issue of domestic violence has been attracting increasing attention in the past few years. For example, here is a commercial sponsored by nomore.org, which played during the American Super Bowl football game.
911, operator 901. Where's the emergency?
127 Brynmere.
Okay, what's going on there?
I'd like to order a pizza for delivery.
Ma'am, you've reached 911. This is an emergency line.
Large with half pepperoni, half mushroom.
You know you've called 911. This is an emergency line.
Do you know how long it'll be?
Okay, ma'am, is everything okay over there? Do you have an emergency or not?
Yes.
And you're unable to talk because...
Right.
Okay, is there someone in the room with you? Just say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like I have an officer about a mile from your location. Are there any weapons in your house?
No.
Can you stay on the phone with me?
No. See you soon. Thank you.
I'm Sue Marie Ainsborough. Thank you for listening.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 Minutes. Health officials in the Democratic Republic of the Congo have declared an end to an Ebola outbreak that began in the country's remote rainforests this spring. The outbreak claimed 33 lives but was contained before it could spread across Central Africa. Tarek Yasarevich is a spokesperson for the World Health Organization in Geneva.
Democratic Republic of the Congo beat this outbreak of Ebola through traditional methods such as case investigation, contact tracing, and providing care to the sick. And also with the new tools, such as vaccinating people who were at risk of being infected by the virus.
All told, 3,000 people were vaccinated in a campaign credited with increasing local trust in health professionals.
Having these people coming to you, responders, was not only to take sick people away, that you may not see them any longer, but these people were bringing some hope. That was the vaccine.
Armed with new medicines and the experience of beating 9 Ebola outbreaks since the 1970s, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is ready to battle future outbreaks. But some aren't sure the same can be said of the United States, where a handful of Ebola cases in 2014 sparked panic. Dr. Craig Spencer is the director for global health at Columbia University Medical Center.
I'm not all that confident that we as an American public are going to respond that much better in 2018 or 2019 than we did in 2014 to the West Africa Ebola outbreak.
Spencer contracted Ebola while volunteering in Guinea in 2014, and from his hospital bed in New York, he watched as the media and politicians fueled hysteria about his case of Ebola instead of educating the public about the disease.
Public health professionals think in nuance with confidence intervals and whatnot. Politicians don't necessarily need to take the same tack and are able to make stronger statements regardless of whether or not they're in the public health interest. One of the big changes needs to be more public health professionals in political leadership.
Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. Well, weather from around the world always begins along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently, 61 degrees. And we are going to go up to probably about 103. They say 99, but I think in my microclimate, it will be around 103. Low in the mid-60s wouldn't be too bad. Tomorrow we're supposed to be a tad warmer. So they say 100, and that means maybe 105. We'll see. It'll be warm. Quite warm. Right now, though, we are in a air quality alert, though currently the quality index locally is at 63, which is considered moderate. Still got to get my mom to wear that mask, but much better than it's been recently. Yeah. I mean, it's not sweet air by any means, but a lot less particulate matter floating around, lodging in your lungs. That's always a good thing. Dry conditions will continue. Humidity currently is at 54%. Dry. But it's been feeling muggy, tropical muggy, but bad because of the smoke in the air. That might have something to do with it. Visibility is down to 7 miles, so there is quite a bit of whatever it is up in the sky. High pressure still dominates the area at 29.93 inches. The UV index, daytime UV, is very high at 9. So everyone take care if you have those numbers in your area. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere in their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 89 degrees and sunny. Paris is 93 degrees and partly cloudy with a heat advisory and thunderstorms in the area that could disrupt the electrical grid. Rome is 88 and sunny. Kiev is 78 and partly cloudy. Kabul is 83 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 76 and cloudy, and it looks like they have a heat advisory. Sydney, Australia is 52 degrees and clear. And San Francisco, California is 52 degrees cloudy with a wind advisory for small craft on the bay and offshore. And New York, New York is 83 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny as all summer can be. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Schmitz from Think Progress brings us this first offering here at the chef's table at a West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In a tweet on Wednesday night, Trump boasted that he struck a deal with the European Union officials to increase European soybean purchases from American farmers. The purchases would be made in exchange for a pledge by the Trump administration not to impose any new tariffs on European vehicles. European Union representatives told me that they would start buying soybeans from our great farmers immediately. Also, they will be buying vast amounts of liquid natural gas. Trump tweeted hours after meeting with European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker at the White House. The deal exempts European automakers from Trump's reported threat to impose a 25% tariff on some $200 billion in foreign-made vehicles, according to the Washington Post. As the outlet noted, Trump believed imposing such tariffs would force American drivers to buy domestic, thereby benefiting U.S. car manufacturers. Experts said it would actually cause the prices on all cars to skyrocket. Republican lawmakers immediately praised the deal because they're a bunch of sycophants, in this reporter's opinion. Senator Rob Portman, who previously expressed concern over how tariffs were hurting his state's agriculture industry, was also optimistic. It's going to help diffuse some of the concern out there, not only in farm country, damn farmers, but in our economy generally. It is a first step. We've still got to work out the details. But it's been hard these last few weeks to see any light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, because the tunnel is blocked. It's collapsed. Sorry, Rob. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte similarly praised the deal, saying Thursday, "I welcome the positive outcome of the conversation between Juncker and Trump. It is very important that the EU and the U.S. cooperate in the field of trade and do not oppose each other." Well, yeah. But experts have doubts. According to the Wall Street Journal, Juncker, as the head of the EU, has little power to promise increased soybean or energy purchases, as they rely on private companies, business decisions, and market conditions. You know, the magic of the market, that ethereal realm that only exists in, I don't know, some people's fantasies. In this reporter's opinion, of course. Paul Donovan, chief economist at UBS Global Wealth Management, agreed. The real winner here would appear to be the EU. The U.S. auto tax threat was reversed in exchange for nothing that means anything, he's told CNBC. The U.S. is already the largest exporter of soybeans to the EU. There are no subsidies, trade taxes, or quotas on soybeans in the EU. Private farmers decide whether to buy more soybeans or not. Wow. Analysts and energy insiders who spoke with the New York Times also said liquid natural gas exports may increase at first, given the slowdown in European production. However, given that Europe can purchase Russian gas at a lower price, U.S. companies that do end up exporting to Europe may end up losing money. Gee, isn't that another convenience? U.S. soybean prices have been hit hard by Trump's trade war with China, leaving farmers in a desperate situation. Early in July, Trump slapped China with a 25% tariff on $34 billion worth of Chinese goods. In response, China levied its own tariffs on an equal amount of American-made goods such as propane, cotton, tobacco, and most notably, soybeans. In the aftermath of that retaliatory strike, U.S. soybean prices dropped to $8.55 a bushel, a 10-year low, and an astonishing 13% decline since just January.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees at the Agence France Presse brings us this last offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The French 77 is apropos for this offering. A consortium of astronomers said yesterday they had, for the first time, confirmed a prediction of Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity by observing the gravitational effects of a supermassive black hole on a star zipping by it. The German-born theoretical physicist had posited that large gravitational forces could stretch light, much like the compression and stretching of sound waves we perceive with the change of pitch of a passing train. The Doppler effect. Researchers from the Gravity Consortium, led by the Max Planck Institute for Extraterrestrial Physics, realized they had a perfect laboratory to test Einstein's theory with the Sagittarius A black hole in the center of the Milky Way. Black holes are so dense that their gravitational pull can trap even light. And the supermassive Sagittarius A has mass 4 million times that of our sun, making it the biggest in our galaxy. Astronomers followed the S2 stars that passed close to the black hole on May 19th at a speed in excess of 25 million kilometers, which is about 15.5 million miles per hour. They then calculated its velocity and position using a number of instruments and compared it with predictions made by Einstein that the light would be stretched by the gravity in an effect called gravitational redshift. Newtonian physics does not allow for a redshift. The results are perfectly in line with the theory of general relativity and are a major breakthrough towards better understanding the effects of intense gravitational fields, said their research team, whose findings are published in today's issue of Astronomy and Astrophysics. This is the first time observers have been able to measure such an effect. The European Southern Observatory, whose very large telescope in Chile was used to make the observations, had watched S2 pass by Sagittarius A in 2016, but the instruments it was using then were not sensitive enough to detect the gravitational redshift. More than 100 years after he published his paper setting out the equations of general relativity, Einstein has been proven right once more in a much more extreme laboratory than he could have possibly imagined, said the European scientists in a statement. Astronomers already use another effect predicted by Einstein's theory of general relativity, that a black hole can bend passing light, called gravitational lensing. Researchers have used it to peer behind black holes. Astronomers hope they can make practical uses of the latest confirmation of Einstein's theory to track shifts in S2's trajectory to gravity, which could yield information on mass distribution around the black hole. Well, what a great discovery. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and for the week here for West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, but not for Netroots Radio. It broadcasts on. We'll meet up with you on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. But stay tuned all day today, all through the weekend, for breaking news as it breaks on Networks Radio. And we will visit with you on Monday in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.